Before I make this video, I just want to point out that I have as much ownership of this franchise as you guys do. I don't think I have the only right opinion about this, but I did want to give you my take on the topic. If you feel different about this, that's no problem at all. Just leave a comment and let's have a good discussion about this. So, Amazon takes over creative control. RIP to the Bond franchise. Or not so fast. While I get that many people are very sentimental, I don't think this deal has to be the end of the world. Even though I'm not an industry insider, I've been a Bond fan for my whole life, and like many people, I cherish Eon very much. But I do think some things had to change around the franchise. Let's start with a little bit of history. Ever since the beginning, the Bond producers had to work from film to film, and financing these giant projects never went very smoothly. The first time this led to real problems was in the 1990s, which is why we missed out on the third and fourth Dalton film. Now luckily things got back on track, but after Quantum of Solace the series again went into a 4-year hiatus, just because MGM was in very big financial trouble. It's a miracle really that every Bond film has performed so well, because if it wasn't for this series, MGM would be dead long ago, to speak with his words. Not only that, as much as I love the Broccoli family, it's not like they didn't ever make a controversial Bond film. From the Craig films alone, we have Quantum of Solace, Spectre, and to a certain extent No Time to Die, which weren't received that well. And even when Cobby and Harry were still producing those films, we had films like The Man with the Golden Gun. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these are bad films, far from it. I don't think there's any bad Bond film. But they do lack something which the other films do have. It's not that Eon was ever flawless at filmmaking. It's just a very comforting idea that whatever they do is always made with love for the character and the idea of protecting him. The Craig era, with the big overarching story, also laid out a big problem. Even though they're one big story, they always got made film by film, and that's very noticeable. The puzzle pieces don't fit perfectly, and don't get me started on the Big Brother Blofeld story. But that's simply because they didn't know if they could ever afford a next film. The series was always on the verge of collapsing. The point is, something had to change with this whole financial situation. And as much as I dislike Amazon as the next girl, they do give the series financial stability. And they were the only ones who wanted to pay this amount of money for MGM. It wasn't Apple, it wasn't Netflix, or whichever streaming company, it was Amazon. We can have lots of feelings about that, but that's simply the way it is. Now, Amazon makes quite a bit of content. I know, scary word, ask Barbara. But they do have series which people are very positive about. Take The Boys, Jack Reacher, or The Man in the High Castle. Not that these series will win any Oscars, but they certainly aren't bad. And I even think that stuff like Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim, I don't know. I'm not really that of a Lord of the Rings guy, but... And I even think with stuff like the new cartoon Lord of the Rings, Amazon does dare to do these things, these quite interesting things. I don't know if I'd like to see a James Bond cartoon. I'm very sorry, James Bond Jr., but at least it's something new and something different. If I had to choose between Eon, who seemed to be tired of Bond for many years, hell, we even have Neil Purvis and Robert Wade screaming for the last few years that they don't know what to do with it, or a team at Amazon who feel very passionate about the project, I would like to give Amazon the benefit of the doubt. We can do that while still acknowledging the rich history of Eon and being skeptical about the future. But being pessimistic won't help anyone. I talked with Cornel and Jort yesterday, editors from James Bond Nederland, the 007 website which I write for, and they told me, for example, that Amazon is much more engaged with the fandom, for example. Now, that's something I really look out for and something I missed quite often in the past. I'm not telling you that Amazon is not going to make mistakes, but I do think we have to give them a fair chance. There are, however, also a few things that I think are quite important for the James Bond DNA. There have always been people who return through the years, people behind the scenes doing very important work, and I do hope that Amazon will still make use of these people, just to keep that DNA around. Think of a Daniel Kleinman who does the titles, or a Greg Wilson who grew into the role just like his father, but was also good at representing a new and younger generation. There are way more of these people, of course, but I do think they're very, very important to keep the DNA around and make sure that most of that Bond magic will still be there. In our livestream yesterday, I said we can maybe loosely compare it to Top Gear becoming the Grand Tour. It was still very good, well, except for the first season, But overall, that dynamic was kept quite intact. I do hope, however, that Amazon realizes that the Bond series needs this typical DNA, this Britishness and this magic to work. Now, I've also heard of people who are afraid of Bond might becoming American. And even though I don't think that's happening, it's also an idea that Cobby Broccoli once had for the follow-up of
Roger Moore.
I do think that having a British cast returning is one of the most important things that make this series big. Now, if they want to do a North American and they want it so badly, of course, Miss Moneypenny was Canadian for a long time, so that's nothing new, but James Bond has to be British. In all honesty, that's not something I'm worrying about. Amazon bought this series because they know that Bond works, not to throw it all away. That also includes starting with the gun barrel or having a title sequence. It wouldn't surprise me even if they'd start with a more classic traditional gun barrel than we had for the Daniel Craig films, just to give us that familiar feeling. Now, before I end this video, I just want to empathize once more that this is all just simply speculation. I think it's important to be neutral about it and not make it personal. That'd be unprofessional, as I would say. I can't follow up with a last bit of speculation. I think that quite soon we'll hear more about this joint venture, who might produce it, who will be the creative director, and maybe some other things. And from that moment on, we'll be able to really say something. Until then, let's be neutral and realize it's not the end of the world. Things will change, but Bond isn't dead, and neither is his very rich past, and everything that Eon Productions built. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about it, so if you want to leave me a comment, please do. Maybe you don't agree at all and you think I'm way too positive about this. Just realize I'm very grateful for Eon Productions and the whole history. Yes, sometimes the old ways are the best, but let's give Amazon some time to prove us wrong. I wish you a very good day, and I'll speak to you soon.